Hello everyone. This is the 38th part of the story, Mārvēl Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Chapter 230. Looking at Bruce, who was in a suit and floating in the sky with divine light surrounded, Hela clenched her fist. This time, she wanted to retrieve the humiliation of being defeated by mortals as a god. She would not be afraid even if Bruce used the time gem again. Because the time gem was the power of universe level after all, and it was impossible for him to exert the real power of the gem if he didn't reach the level. Even the god who was the god level, if his energy was not able to break through the awakening of the universe level, he could only exert 1/10 of the power of the universe's original stone. It was impossible for a mortal to hold a divine weapon with the effect of a true god holding a divine weapon. After all, the universe's original stone was not built for mortals from the very beginning. At the moment, there were no fancy moves. Hela just stretched out her clenched fist and gave a simple punch. This punch was like the determination of Hela to recapture the Asgard regime. And how powerful the right was, how heavy the first was. The power hidden in the fist was even enough to break the star nucleus of Asgard. Hela's determination was undoubtedly firm. At this moment, the space around Hela was shrouded by invisible darkness. Within hundreds of meters, apart from the still shining Bruce, there was only the brilliance of Hela's fist. When Bruce saw the momentum of Hela, he was moved. At the moment, he could sense that the obsession of Hela was even more pure after Odin's death. Not only did she recover the strength of god level, even half step beyond the level. After she was completely out of this step, it would be the power of fixed star level. And this step also heralded that she had transcended her father, Odin, the king of God in Norse mythology. Bruce did not expect Hela, who had learned from the pains, to become so powerful. Then Bruce also moved. But he did not choose to use the immortal thunder spear. As a person who had already crossed that step, using weapons to fight against Hela was undoubtedly an insult to him. He enjoyed this moment very much. After all, his strength was awakened by the system. He wanted to know how the strong who took this step by their own efforts were different from him. At this moment, Bruce seemed not to gather any power, and then the same simple punch was aimed at Hela. Bang! There even wasn't flying dust. To others, neither of them seemed to use their strength. In fact, only Bruce knew that in the instant the two fists touched, Hela's strength hidden in her fist made Bruce like that he had fully endured the explosion of Titan Star. It was even more painful than the final fight against Thanos. After all, the Titan Star's explosion was not aimed at Bruce. At the moment he just suffered the aftermath of the explosion. But this time, the effect was completely different. The power comparable to the planetary explosion was completely accepted by him. Even if his body of God and devil made it impossible for him to face a deadly danger. But this violent power still shook him away. The scary thing was that, except for Bruce, the people around didn't feel any unusual. And all the power was not wasted, and all of them were poured into Bruce's body. This was the real fixed star level strong person's ability to control power. Seeing Bruce flying to the sky, at the moment, Thor raised his axe angrily. Boom! A thunder was summoned by the axe in the sky, and Thor absorbed these powers into his body to his heart's content. At this moment, Thor's eyes were flashing with power waves. He held the divine weapon with lightning surrounded in his hand, and then jumped into the sky. Damn Hela, you can't beat my axe this time. Seeing Thor's heavy blow down to her, Hela was not afraid, but showed a faint smile. Obviously Thor did not understand what Hela shook Bruce away meant. At that moment, Hela pulled a punch again. Seeing that Hela dared to use her fist to pick up his axe, Thor thought she must have overreached herself. Thor was excited to think of the scene where Hela was killed by himself. But the reality was cruel. Thor's axe did not split Hela's arm, and the powerful force collapsed even before it was near the fist. Then the axe and Thor separated, and the axe was scattered on the ground. Thor was bleeding from the 7 orifices of the shock. So terrible. The Heimdall brothers and sisters led tens of thousands of troops but were shocked by Hela. At the time, they had already crossed the Bifrost to the other side and surrounded the river bank. There was even no soldier behind Hela. It seemed that she was confronting the thousands of armies of God. However, the battlefield was surprisingly quiet, even without a slightest sound. Because they all knew how strong Bruce and Thor were. One of them beat the legendary snake and scared the huge wolf Fenrir away, and the other was the most powerful man in Asgard. Both of them were defeated with just one punch. If Bruce's punch was lucky enough, Thor's tragic appearance had become a straw to crush everyone's inner camel. The army was already terrified. In the sky, Valkyrie, who was riding the flying horse, looked at Hela angrily. Knowing that she was not her opponent, she still wanted to rush down and fight with Hela desperately. But as a commander-in-chief, her calmness still made her turn her eyes to Bruce. After a brief hesitation, Valkyrie chose to fly to Bruce. At the moment, Hela looked at the army in front of him with disdain, then she turned around and left. As she turned around, the undead army appeared. There were so many of them that they even hid the sky and the sun. Skeletons, zombies, dark knights. All kinds of undead were erupting green flames from their eyes. They rushed towards Heimdall and the army with expressionless faces. The two armies quickly docked. At first, the Protoss army was able to make decent resistance. But these tireless monsters couldn't be killed at all. Over time, a large number of Protoss soldiers were killed. Listening to the screams one after another around. The darkness seemed to merge them again. Soon, these Protoss soldiers dropped their weapons and hugged their heads and knelt on the ground. After seeing the surrendering warrior, the undead did not continue to kill. It was clear that this was Hela's order. As a result, more soldiers knelt on the ground. No! At the moment, Heimdall smashed the skull in front of him with a sword. Seeing the situation was over, he had no choice but to lead the remnant army and take the unconscious Thor leaving the battlefield. Inside Valkyrie's spaceship. After Bruce opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the concerned eyesight from Valkyrie. "That's great! Bruce, you finally woke up." At the moment, Bruce raised his hand and stroked the beauty's haggard face with distress. Then he said gently, "Don't worry about me, Valkyrie. There do not exist people who can kill me in the 9 countries." "Really? I thought you were injured. Do you know how worried I am?" Valkyrie looked at Bruce and said with a burning eyesight. Chapter 231. After fighting with Hela, Bruce found that her energy was indeed still in the planet level, but her control of power reached the fixed star level. But now, Bruce's control of power was still in the primitive stage of planet level. And Hela was the opposite of Bruce. She had far greater control over power than Bruce. So Hela was able to punch him when their strength was not equal. And finally, they just hit a tie. Hela was indeed the goddess of Aesir. She had never stopped practicing herself even in the thousands of years that she was sealed by Odin. And after being driven away by Bruce with Time Gem, she was still practicing. More importantly, Hela also absorbed the experience of Odin's life fighting. Because Odin was the king of gods and also a member of Aesir. After his death, the soul would naturally return to the embrace of Hela. And in this way, Hela could read the memories of Odin's whole life as long as she wanted it. After the death of any member of Aesir, their memories would be absorbed by Hela. The more dead, the stronger Hela would be, and finally, Hela would be as strong as it was now. According to the rating of the system, Bruce knew that the strength from Earth level to God level was essentially the metamorphosis of the planet level's power from elementary level to high level. And in the Avengers, those were not out of the human category, like Captain America, Black Panther, Hawkeye, and Black Widow, all belonging to the Earth level. The Earth was not the most powerful of the planets, so there was still a long way to become the planet-level powerhouse. Until one day, surpassing the planet level, he would transform into a fixed star-level powerhouse like Hela. But as for Thor, although he had already reached the pinnacle of planet level, when he met a fixed star level like Hela, he was still beaten. Because a level was just the gap between heaven and earth. As for the domain masters and world masters above the fixed stars, namely the singular universe and multiverse powerhouses, they were even more powerful. Bruce was speculating. If comparing the death of God with Hela, it was like that one was the god who possessed the law of death of Asgard, and the other was the true god who possessed the law of death of the entire universe. Hela had lived for thousands of years, but the true god of death had existed since the birth of the universe. How many years the true god of death had lived could be counted in billions. And this gap was big enough to make anyone numb. Even the death of Hela would only become the nourishment of the true god of death. It was just like Thanos slaughtered half of the creatures in the universe, which would actually make the true god of death stronger. But death was the unrequited love of Thanos. Thanos liked death, but the true god of death didn't like Thanos. So this made Bruce wonder whether there was a true god of death driving Thanos to do these. At the moment, Bruce found that he still had a long way to go. After all, for these true gods, the infinite gems were just a plaything created by them through the power of rules. So Bruce decided to find the opportunity to download Hela's law of death power. But his current energy value was not enough at all. Killing Hela would not necessarily download this ability. So before killing Hela, these people in Asgard were all tasteless. They could not be killed or abandoned. For example, Thor was strong enough to compete with Hela one day, which seemed to be an exciting thing. But if Thor was killed, Hela would only be much stronger. At the moment, Hela had not killed all the gods of Asgard, but was surrendering them continuously. Obviously, her purpose was to repeatedly use them like pigs, because if all of Asgard's men died, how could she gain strength? But her law of death also had restrictions. That was that it was only useful to Asgard's people. Thinking about it, Bruce opened the loaded information after he touched Hela again. Name, Hela. Identity, Goddess of Death. Ability, Control Life and Death, 200W, Hela Fist, 150W, Acer Body, Energy Value 100W, Regeneration, 100W, Astral Projection, 100W, The God's Telekinesis of Death, 80W, Death Magic, 80W. Item, Sword of the Night Sky, 50W. Hela Cloak 30W. After reading Hela's message, Bruce felt a little bit of an understanding. Controlling life and death was just the law of Hela. Well, it needed 200W energy value, which was more than that of Thanos' divine body. And Bruce guessed that Hela actually used the ability of Divine Punch to fight with him. Thousands of years of repression turned into an obsession with power, and Hela understood a rule. The rule of Hela's Divine Punch was naturally powerful. And the greater the power of Hela's Divine Punch. Angry women were always so scary. At the moment, Bruce suddenly thought of Wanda, who was far away on the earth. Originally, Wanda produced all kinds of anger under the death of Vision and a series of actions that stimulated her. And then she awakened the power of chaos. Chaos was also a rule. So as the carrier of the power of chaos on Earth, Wanda could definitely become the powerful ruler of the universe level when growing up. But the present Wanda became his woman, so the progress of awakening became zero. After all, Bruce hadn't even thought about putting her on the battlefield. Bruce, what are you thinking? At the moment Valkyrie waved his hand before Bruce. When are we going to see Heimdall? I heard that Thor was seriously injured. What? Thor was also injured? Yes. Then hurry up, I don't want him to die. At the moment, divine consciousness swept through Alsace, and Bruce was surprised to find that he could not find the location of Heimdall and Thor. It seemed that Heimdall still had his own secret. It was also because of this point, Heimdall could play hide and seek with Hela in her place. Then let's go, I will take you to meet them. As Acer's kingdom, Valkyrie obviously knew Heimdall's secret. Thud. At the moment, Pegasus spread its wings. Valkyrie sat on it and beckoned to Bruce. Bruce sat up holding the softness of Valkyrie's chest. He looked at the buildings of Alsace for a while, and experienced the romantic sea breeze. And later the Pegasus fell in front of a seemingly ordinary mountain. At the moment, Valkyrie took the lead and twisted hard at the mountain's mechanism. Just in this way, the cave opened a door to the inside. At the moment, the entrance of the cave was full of runes that only Asgardians could understand. Bruce touched it with his hand. It had the energy containing the breath of Aesir body, and seemed to be some kind of ancient formation. At the moment, Bruce closed the door. He felt that although his god's telekinesis was isolated, his ears could still perceive the outside world. What a magical place! It seemed that this place was just the shelter of Helldam in Asgard. The walls in the cave were full of lights. Following the passage, Bruce released his god's telekinesis, and then he realized that thousands of people lived in this cave. Valkyrie led the way, and then Bruce saw Thor, who was still unconscious, and Heimdall's brothers and sisters in a short time. Chapter 232. Oh, Bruce, it's great to see you. Heimdall's expression was no longer suspicious as it used to be. At the moment, he began to accept Bruce. After all, Bruce saved his life when he met Fenrir and Jemingard. Not to mention that Hela was so powerful now. And the fear of the remaining fighters of Asgard to Hela was very deep in their hearts. More importantly, Rustic was extremely low. Bruce, as a person who could fight with Hela, definitely became Asgard's life-saving straw. At the moment, Bruce nodded at Heimdall. And then he looked at Thor, who was lying on the bed, and just silently put the divine consciousness into Thor's body and had an observation. He found that Thor's situation was really bad. At the moment, Bruce found that his heart was being wrapped in a mass of black death energy. So he secretly used God's telekinesis to move it. But these death energies were resurrected again. It looked like they had grown in Thor's body. More importantly, Thor's body was nourishing these death energy. And if Bruce continued to move the death energy, Thor would only be killed. Obviously, Hela used the power of being the god of Asgard. And before Thor could not compete with Hela, this power would not disappear. Because this disease could only be moved when Thor reached the strength of fixed star level. Therefore, no one could help him. But if Bruce had Reality Gem, he could definitely help Thor. But this thing was taken away by Thanos, so Bruce couldn't do anything for Thor now. Shaking his head, Bruce said to everyone, Thor has been hit by Hela's magic and will not wake up for the time being. What? Bruce, do you know how long he will be in a coma? Sif asked worriedly. Maybe it was not too long. Bruce didn't want to let Sif down, so he gave her an ambiguous answer. Why is this happening? Sif looked sad. Don't worry, he will wake up when I come back next time, Bruce said seriously. Why? Obviously, Sif couldn't understand. Heimdall also looked at Bruce curiously. After all, he had used all the methods, so he clearly knew Thor's situation as well. Because at that time, Hela had been killed by me. After speaking this, Bruce winked at Sif. Then he glanced at Valkyrie, turned and just left. At the moment, Valkyrie followed Bruce knowingly. And seeing the two leaving behind, Sif looked at Heimdall. Is what Bruce said true? Heimdall sighed, we can only trust him now, and wish the gods bless Asgard. After leaving the cave, Valkyrie looked at Bruce, where are we going? Bruce pointed to Valkyrie's dilapidated spear on the back of the Pegasus, go to Odin's treasure house, it's time to change your weapon. Seeing Bruce caring about herself, Valkyrie blushed slightly. That place is heavily guarded, and Hela is also there, how can we get in? At the moment, Bruce smiled, and took out the crystal ball from system space. Look for the location of Daniel's gun. As soon as the words finished, the crystal ball naturally surged, and then Odin's treasure vault appeared in a short time. Wow, it's amazing! Valkyrie touched the crystal ball with her hand. At the moment, Bruce put his arms around Valkyrie's waist. Because the crystal ball had transported the specific location to his mind. In Valkyrie's exclamation, Bruce used the space gem. Then the blue light flashed, and they were teleported into Odin's treasure room. As soon as they arrived, Bruce immediately wrapped him and Valkyrie with the god's telekinesis so Hela would not feel them. At the moment, Bruce observed the situation. Fortunately, except for the space gem that had fallen into his hands after being taken away by Loki. The important things were basically there. Odin put all the good things here. It seemed that he had thought that someone would come to steal the treasure. The things in Odin's treasury were real or fake, and most of them had magic traps. But these traps were all meaningless to Bruce, because he had already loaded his acute eyes and acute ears. More importantly, his perception and the god's telekinesis were even more extraordinary. And even if he didn't hold these things in his hands, he could still tell the truth from the fake through the density of these treasures and the intensity of their energy. At the moment, Bruce just walked forward. The first thing that came into view was the Infinity Gauntlet. Bruce smiled and ignored it. He had touched the Infinity Gauntlet when he was fighting with Thanos before. The interior of Infinity Gauntlet was very delicate, but this one was just an empty shell. It was more like Odin's show-off artwork, which was obviously fake. The second thing was the crown of the Flame Giant. At the moment, Bruce's eyes jumped. He thought this one was okay, and there was flame energy inside. It seemed that it was Thor who put it in, so there was no trap. And the crown could summon Surti, which was part of Bruce's plan. So he threw the crown into the system space without any hesitation. Seeing Bruce taking a black crown away without saying a word, Valkyrie suddenly rushed ahead of him. "What is this?" Valkyrie took an ordinary-looking wooden stick. "This is the branch of the World Tree." Bruce once stayed in Ancient One's library, and ever saw the descriptions of all kinds of strange things in the universe in books. So when divine consciousness touched it slightly, he had recognized it based on the abundant life energy inside the branch. This is a good thing. At the moment, Bruce leaned against Valkyrie, touched the branches, and then smashed the inner magic trap calmly. "So you take it." Looking at Bruce, Valkyrie put it away unceremoniously. And then she continued to walk ahead and saw a golden tray, where an eye as big as her fist rested on the tray. But Valkyrie quickly lost interest. At the moment, Bruce just shook his head. This thing was called Argin Ball, and it was one of the 5 treasures of Doctor Strange. Usually, it could see through fantasy and increase the power of magic. And once owning Time Gem, he could see the past and the future just like Doctor Strange. Then Bruce took it away and shattered the magic circle inside again. "I know this." At the moment, Valkyrie picked up 2 stone steels. One showed blue light and the other emitted black light. Steel of life and death. With that, she seemed to be recalled. "I saw Odin spent a lot of time studying this inscription before his death, but he didn't seem to be able to find any results. Is it right?" At the moment, Bruce took them over and looked at the 2 steels. He tried to infiltrate divine consciousness, but in vain. But he could faintly feel the power of rules in it. Bruce thought they were good things. Although they couldn't be used now, they would definitely be useful in the future. Maybe relying on these 2 things, Bruce could comprehend part of the rules of life and death. Therefore, Bruce put the steels away. "You can't use this stuff, I'll keep it." Valkyrie pouted. And after that, Valkyrie was no longer interested in these weird-looking things, but looked for something beautiful in appearance and able to decorate herself. Chapter 233. Does this flower look good on my head? At the moment, Valkyrie blinked at Bruce. In the past, as the general of Asgard, she only knew to kill the enemy on the battlefield. She was so brave that the soldiers were all subservient to her. But now, she was more and more like a woman. This change even surprised herself. "Well, it's very good." At the moment, Bruce collected the last piece of the eternal fire, and then picked up Valkyrie. And Valkyrie found a life-filled emerald green dress, which was extremely beautiful on her. Looking at Valkyrie's tender arms, full breasts, and long flowing hair, Bruce was a little dizzy. This is an elf queen's clothes that the Queen of Alfheim. In order to thank Odin Majesty for helping the elf kingdom drive away the desperate dragon Nidhogg at the moment, Valkyrie said this excitedly, hiding in Bruce's arms. "Niederhoff? Is the guy hiding at the root of the World Tree?" Bruce was a little curious. "Yeah, how did you know that? He is even stronger than Hela." At the moment, Valkyrie said, originally, dragons existed at the top of creatures, not to mention the god of dragons like Nidhogg. "I can see him, indeed, his breath has reached the step of Hela. But when I saw him, he is not a dragon, but a person." Hearing what Bruce said, Valkyrie was shocked. This is Asgard, so how can you see him far from the world tree? At the moment, Bruce's eyes moved slightly. Because of my eyes, I can see farther than Heimdall. At the moment, Valkyrie was silent when she heard the words, and leaned her head against Bruce's shoulder to find a more comfortable place. She was too lazy to figure out the reason. For her, this was a kind of silent trust. The stronger her man was, the more secure she would only be. And at the beginning, she felt that Bruce was just a glib tongue that wanted to sleep with her and was the five scum of the Earth War without much fighting power. And at that time, it was her first time to have sex with man, so she had to humiliate him with anger and helplessness. But after contact, she slowly discovered that this man surprised herself more and more. She also knew that, at the moment, Bruce's strength was already stronger than Odin's now. Her original life was truly gone forever. And following Bruce, she found the meaning of life again. Hugging Valkyrie for a while, Bruce suddenly asked, I saw a lot of tombstones above our heads, where are they? That is Soul Castle. At the moment, Valkyrie jumped from Bruce's arms. As a Valkyrie, I will bring the heroic souls of the world to Soul Castle, then teach them the martial arts of the Protoss, and train them to become Asgardians. At the moment, Bruce interrupted Valkyrie. Obviously, he was not interested in the duties of the Valkyrie. I feel there is something that suits you well. Let's go there and go around. After speaking that, Bruce just teleported him and Valkyrie. With a pop sound, the space rippled, and then they came to Soul Castle. At the moment, Bruce looked up. Soul Castle was a surprisingly large hall. From the outside, it seemed to be covered with a black mist, making people feel gloomy and dull. At the moment, divine consciousness entered the hall through the gate. Bruce saw that it was full of undead monsters, and some dark knights were gesturing with spears and swords in the highest hall, looking like they were polishing their skills. It seems that Odin's fairy barracks have become Hellas' paradise for the dead. Bruce said, looking at Valkyrie, whose expression changed drastically. This place used to be not so gloomy, but a golden and glorious place. Obviously, Valkyrie was dissatisfied with Hela's transformation. You should thank Hela for doing this, otherwise the weapon will not hide itself because he hated the bad aura. You mean? At the moment, Valkyrie seemed to have guessed what Bruce said. Bruce just dignifiedly pointed towards the ground of Soul Castle, and then used the power of reality to urge light source. Immediately, a silver-white light radiated from his back, and the light fluttered just like a long river of waterfalls. At the moment, he was floating in the air, looking like an angel in the dark world. Get up! Bruce lifted his hands up. And then a violent force was triggered by his powerful light force from somewhere underground. Boom! A light shined in the darkness, and a hole was made in the ground. Suddenly there was a misty voice of praise from Soul Castle. It seemed to be the eternal oath of countless heroes, and it seemed that the light could make the stars fall out of the ground. Boom! 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 Then, a light gun that seemed to possess endless divine power broke freely from the light. This is... Seeing the change in front of her, Valkyrie said dumbfounded, Gungnir. Valkyrie never expected that after Odin's fall, his sharp spear would be born here. This artifact had 3 other names. The Gun of Oath, Eternal Spear, and Meteor Gun. According to legend, this gun and Fairy Bow Hill, the Sword of Flame Levitin, and the Treasure of Dragon Opu together guarded the light of the 9 kingdoms. The handle of the gun was made by the branches of the World Tree, and there was a sacred contract on it, which could not be destroyed by any artifact. According to legend, the person who swore to the Gungnir would definitely fulfill his vow. This was why the world would swear to the meteor. At the moment, Bruce tried his best to hold the Gungnir and turned to face Valkyrie. With a solemn expression, he said, Valkyrie, swear to the sharp spear, it has already sent consciousness to me. If you don't swear, it will leave here soon. Swear? At the moment, Valkyrie settled down. Well, now that the 9 major nations were in unprecedented chaos, someone really needed to stand up and take responsibility. I, Valkyrie, take an oath under the stars of Asgard. I will break the darkness and re-establish peace and order for the 9 kingdoms. Boom! The sharp gun was alive, and it seemed to have understood Valkyrie's oath. After a while, it turned into a stream of light and flashed towards Valkyrie. Bang! At the moment, Valkyrie was wearing a golden helmet unique to Aesir, and put on a blood-colored tight-fitting shirt. She caught the shining gun, her aura rose sharply, and she was another Odin alive. Catching the Gungnir was equivalent to accepting the inheritance of the King of Gods. Boom! The abnormal movement outside Soul Castle quickly shook the undead creatures inside. At the moment, a large number of monsters crowded the gates of Soul Castle, rushing towards Valkyrie. At the moment, Bruce reacted, as he had noticed that Hela was coming here quickly. It's too late. As he said, he took the beauty's arm, the spatial ripple appeared again, and the two disappeared instantly. Chapter 234. The Flame Kingdom of the 9 Powers, full name of Muspelheim, symbolized an eternal flame. And the flame world was a very high-temperature barren planet. Therefore, in such a land, it was difficult for plants to live, its surface was ravines, and the cracks of the lava were spreading everywhere. Every other distance there was a live volcano with hot gas and magma. Such natural environments created creatures of flame nations. They often revealed a burst of breath, emitting dim and red light. Some of them were animal forms, and others were human-shaped. These uneven flame creatures followed the law of jungle, coupled with the original irritableness of character. Therefore, they were always fighting, self-abilities, then died. And later, the strong devoured the weak and became more powerful. The whole society was in the original form of the slave system, and the weak people were enslaved by the masters. At last, standing at the top of the food chain was the flame giant and the giant dragon. And standing on the giant and the dragon was just the flame kingdom, Surtur. At the moment, Bruce was standing in the flame kingdom. He took the crown of Surtur with one hand, and held the eternal fire with another hand. After numerous creatures of Flame Kingdom perceived the eternal fire, they seemingly saw the most tempting food. At the moment, they were constantly moving towards the position of the flame. Valkyrie stood at Bruce's side now, held the Dangren's gun, and emitted dazzling light energy from top to bottom. At the moment, the bright meteor's light burst out from the top of Dangren's gun. And it shot all of the flame creatures nearby Bruce. But Bruce did not pay attention to these weak flame creatures, instead, he just put the eternal fire in Surtur's crown. Then a huge amount of flame power burst out of the crown immediately. Surtur's body was just shaped by the violent flame energy step by step, from the human shape to the hill shape. And this made Bruce and Valkyrie look like ants. At the moment, a huge amount of flame swords condensed from Surtur's hand. It was just the Twilight Sword of Surtur, which was also known as the Sword of Destruction and the Sword of the Last Day. At the moment, holding the Twilight Sword, Surtur had already reached the top of the planet level. And when the giant was completely shaped, Surtur's eyes finally opened. Then he just struck Bruce without saying anything else, and the red flame fell with the huge Twilight Sword. Boom! At the moment, Bruce took out the immortal Star Spear and stopped the Twilight Sword. Sizzle! Sizzle! At the moment, the light wings of the angel form appeared behind him, and Bruce just floated against Surtur's huge Twilight Sword. It looked like an ant had defeated an incredible giant. This sense made Surtur feel uncomfortable, because he could clearly feel that Bruce's small body had condensed a powerful force that was stronger than he was at that time. At the moment, Bruce looked at Surtur calmly. He had already been well prepared, so he dared to release you out. Oh! At the moment, Surtur swung his single arm, and then a huge flame dragon was summoned. The giant dragon did not heed Surtur to target Bruce, and sprayed a hot and destructive dragon breath. At the moment, Valkyrie's heart moved. The flame dragon's breath was growing rapidly and she did not want to see Bruce hit by the dragon's breath. Valkyrie didn't think much of it, and immediately urged the meteor beam of Dangarner to attack the dragon. Boom! At the moment, the meteor beam quickly extinguished the dragon's breath and shot the dragon's body. Ow, ow! Right now, the dragon just roared and threw the bloody fog in the air to the ground. But Surtur was not surprised by the death of the giant dragon. As the ruler of the Flame Kingdom, he gained almost unlimited energy bonuses for owning the eternal fire. Boom! At the moment, the earth trembled and countless fissures emerged, then some giant hands climbed out of the magma of the cliff. Countless flame giants were summoned by Surtur. These giants held various swords flowing with lava, and surrounded Bruce and Valkyrie. Looking at the surrounding fire giants, Bruce opened Surtur's information. Name, Surtur. Identity, King of the Flame World. Ability, the Undead Body, energy value 100W, the Fire King's Power, energy value 100W, Flame Control, energy value 100W, Flame Call, energy value 100W, Flame Giant's Blood Vessel, energy value 80W, Flame Immunity, energy value 80W, and Stealth, energy value 50W. Item, the Eternal Fire, energy value 150W, Twilight Sword, energy value 100W. As expected, the strength of Surtur was not as strong as Hela, but he was much more powerful than Thor. After coming to the Flame Kingdom, he not only strengthened his all abilities to the limits, but also used the Eternal Fire to summon dragon and fire giants endlessly. But these flame giants were still not enough for the present Bruce. Suddenly, Bruce speeded to the extreme. Swoosh! When the giants were too late to react, Bruce had used the immortal star spear to dismember them. The giants' lava blood was shot everywhere, and the broken limbs flew to the ground. Beep! Congratulations to the host for killing dragon and getting 30 energy values. Beep! Congratulations to the host for killing dragon and getting 30 energy values. The sound of the system kept ringing. And finally dozens of flame giants had contributed hundreds of energy values to Bruce. At the moment, Bruce pursed his lips, and then smiled slightly. That was just the purpose of his release of Surtur. Since the eternal fire would not go out, then Surtur would not stop calling the flames and fighting with him. Therefore, even the life of the entire flame planet would turn into his energy value. When he got enough energy points, he could download Hela's ability and then complete the task of the system. Oh! At the moment, Surtur still did not know that he had fallen into Bruce's energy tool. He just swung his Twilight Sword and struck Bruce again. At the moment, Bruce did not fight against him hard, but flashed the attack of Surtur easily. Boom! Right now, the volcano behind Bruce was cut off by Surtur directly, and countless magmas burst out in an instant. It turned into a red lava ocean at the foot of Bruce. Well! At the moment, Bruce hurriedly waved his light wings in the air, looking for the Valkyrie who was still fighting with various flames creatures on the land. Hiss! At the moment, a loud roar came behind Bruce. Then Bruce turned around and saw Valkyrie, who was riding in the sky. Valkyrie was still that heroic female martial god. But at the moment, the unknown white horse under her hip surprisingly stepped on 8 hooves. This is Sperversus. Valkyrie explained to Bruce. It's the true mount of the King of the Gods. This marks the end of part 38 of the story Mārvēl Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.